Hello, lovely learneds. Welcome back to A Life Learned. So, do I have quite the story for you? So much so that I had to write points to make sure I don't forget everything. For those who aren't aware, I'm a really big fan of live music and a particularly huge fan of the band Bastille and the band Imagine Dragons. Back in I want to say late January or February, when Bastille posted on their Instagram that they were going to be attending and an artist within the music festival Corona Capital, specifically Corona Capital Guadalajara, which is in Mexico, for those who aren't aware. I got really excited and was like, let's do it. Let's go to Mexico. And yeah, I know, right away you're like, you're ridiculous. What are you doing? I did have the thought of going alone because I've been doing a lot of music festivals and art alone just to experience, regardless of whether I have someone who's interested in coming with me. But I did know that Shane is interested in both those bands. They're favorites of both of ours. So I invited him and was like, you want to do it? Let's do it. Let's try. He'd never flown before, never had his passport before, but he was like, yeah, okay, this is crazy, but let's give it a try. So I wasn't entirely sure about it at first, but then he just suddenly had the tickets, and I was like, are you kidding me? Okay, I guess we're doing this then. And I quickly bought the plane tickets and got the reservation for the hotel. For whatever reason, well, actually, it's probably a very obvious reason, they would only allow him to buy the most expensive tickets that they had. And I later learned, after all these purchases had been made, that the purpose of Corona Capital is to allow Mexicans to have access to international music that generally doesn't come down to Mexico a lot. So I recognize now it was a bit of a shitty move of me as a white North American to go down there and be like, I'm going to attend your music festival. At the same time, they still had tons of tickets left for our area, the most expensive, like, sectioned off space. I didn't, in one sense I felt bad I was taking space, but in another I was like, they still had tickets left. So anyway, I was really surprised at my ability to handle my anxiety up until the actual day of the flight, like when it all started, which was May 19th. Just trying to go to Toronto was a disaster. Like, I would have a complete meltdown, a panic attack. I'd get so anxious that I would get super nauseous and be like debilitated, basically bedridden, and useless. And so I was fully expecting that for this trip, and it just didn't happen initially, which was good. And well, I guess you could say I was never bedridden, but yeah, I did have symptoms. So the first flight was delayed, which was a bit annoying, but we had a reasonable layover in the second flight that I didn't feel too worried about that. We were flying with Air Mexico, yeah, don't fly to Mexico when they tell you that a volcano's gone off. Or more specifically, if your flight is specifically going to an area the volcano is near, and the volcano went off recently, expect delays. So one thing I did wrong, paid no attention to the news. Just didn't check on stuff like that. And so for those who hadn't heard about this, the volcano called Popocatépetl, there I did it, which is just outside of Mexico City, erupted 3 days before our initial flight out. So that became a problem. That was probably the reason for like all of the bullshit that we went through. So first we were flying with Air Mexico. Their first flight was delayed, probably as a result of like because it was coming from Mexico City, and this volcano is just outside Mexico City. So then it's a good chance that had something to do with it. And then when we got there, it was the flight that we were leaving for was very delayed. By the way, if you ever go to Mexico, don't expect things to be on time. It was really interesting to experience because, like, I get the island approach. Like, I've been to Fiji and I know that they run on island time where they are not on a very strict schedule. In the villages, that makes a lot of sense to me. But in the airport, where things are like really strict and relying on other international airports, like other countries' schedules and stuff, I just kind of didn't expect that. I didn't experience that when I went to Fiji, where they were just like not on time. So yeah, but apparently everyone at the Mexico City airport was like, yeah, this is just kind of how it is. They say they still say on the board that they're on time, but it's like 10 minutes after they're supposed to arrive and there's no plane. Okay. And then we end up finding out that because of other issues, probably caused by this volcano going off, flights had straight up been canceled the day before, and they filled our seat with other people. They bumped us off the plane. So I started panicking. Oh, and sorry, before that, I was already panicking because I had left my cat in care of my mother, and I told her to give me updates, but I guess I wasn't explicitly clear about how important those updates would be to me. So when she didn't think to turn on my internet, which I had specifically given her the password for so that she could use, so that she could send me these messages, when she didn't do that, I started to freak out a bit. And because I had done the math with the time, we were 2 hours behind where I live in Eastern Standard Time. So we were in Central Time, and so I was like, well, she should have visited by now. If she hasn't visited by now, then what's going on? And so I started contacting her, but couldn't get a hold of her. Tried to contact my dad, couldn't get a hold of him. So I'm just like kind of in meltdown mode that something's wrong with either my mom or my cat or both. And then they're like, yeah, also you're bumped off your flight. You might have to like take it tomorrow. And I'm like, the festival's tomorrow. That's unacceptable. Like, I can't do that. I'm not a super person / a normal human being who can like exert that much energy in one day. I have spoons. I have limited spoons. I cannot fly and go to a music festival in the same day. Like, I get that you superhuman normies who like don't have fibromyalgia and PTSD can do that. I cannot do that. So I was like, no, you're ruining everything. So yeah, it was that absolutely totally completely messed with my anxiety, because again, it put me into panic, and it led to, it was not pretty. It was not pretty. So I ended up contacting my brother-in-law, who I was like, can you please text my mom? And that's a very complicated situation, but that didn't work out. Asked another friend. They did. That didn't work out, where like she just didn't reply. And then I asked another friend who was like, she texted and she called, nothing. And then I was like, okay, try my dad. And so she did right beside my mom, and it was like all explained that I was fine, and she just forgot to send updates. And so that sucked, but I was able to calm down for that. And then I was just freaking out about being bumped off our flight. But the way it worked is that they had a wait list that was like in the order of whoever bought their tickets. So people who don't show up, who had booked those seats as cancellations, were then filled with us, basically. So we got on. I had a meltdown, but we got on. Thank fucks. So we got to that. Obviously that meant our flight was delayed like 2 hours, just trying to sort all that out and stuff. And so we got in really late to the hotel, but that was fine. But like, I was rough at this point. And by the way, Air Mexico, they're just rough flights. Just if you ever fly them, FYI, be prepared. They're rough. Like, I don't really remember who I flew with in 2012 and 2013 when I went to Fiji, other than obviously Air Fiji. But like the flights that I took from Toronto to Minneapolis to California, I don't remember the airline. I know it wasn't that bad. I did throw up on the landing to California. I don't remember if I ever threw up since then. But like, you know, I've had rough times, but Air Mexico was rough, and like rough all the way through. Like, there was a lot of turbulence, so they couldn't help that, but I mean like rough takeoff and rough landing. And the second flight was, so the first flight was from Toronto to Mexico City, and then it was from Mexico City to Guadalajara. And so, which seems silly because Mexico City is further south than Guadalajara, but whatever. This ended up being the like main reason for all of our problems, was because the volcano was just south of Mexico City. But anyway, they flew us in and then flew us out. And on the landing to Guadalajara, I threw up like 3 times. It was rough. So I had a very empty stomach and a very anxious stomach and body and core, which was not good. We ended up learning that cannabis is like has been legalized in Mexico, but it hasn't, the legislation hasn't actually like gone through fully, or like something. It's still in the gray. If you guys remember how it was in the gray in Canada, that's how it is down in there, even though there's legislation. So that meant that like the only places we could find were dispensaries with tinctures and CBDs that were all like edibles. And I don't respond to edibles. Or like vapes and stuff, and I wasn't sure if that would work for my symptoms because I've tried vaping when I was younger and it didn't work. That's not to say it wouldn't have now, but it became a whole kerfuffle about trying to find cannabis just to get my nerves to calm down. And like, to be clear, I was trying to medicate with other stuff. I had clonazepam on me, which I don't take that regularly, but when I'm having a panic attack, that's the one thing that sort of helps. Other than cannabis, I should say. And then I was on Gravol as well. Like, I was trying to drug myself up on shit that was legal. It wasn't working. But that was just the way it was. So, like, I did the best I could, and I managed because I've developed a lot of skills on managing my anxiety and, like, learning how to relax parts of my body. So, like, I was able to sleep, which was key. In the past, I couldn't figure out how to calm down in order to sleep, which meant that everything went to shit. So sleeping really helped, but I woke up and basically immediately started being anxious again. And so it made it hard to eat. I didn't like eat very much. I ate what I could, but it just wasn't much. Very sensitive stomach basically when I'm in that state. But one thing I wanted to mention about the hotel was that they had this cool power system where your card to open your door was also like the card to keep the power going. They had this like slot that you put your card in, and you had to put it there or nothing in the room would work. Like none of the lights or none of the air conditioner, nothing would function. And so in that way, you always have to take your card with you in order to leave, which means that they save a lot of power because no one can leave all their stuff on when they leave. And I'm just like, that's so cool. And no, it doesn't seem to be like, their insulation stuff is good. So even though the AC doesn't stay on, it doesn't seem to like overheat in the room while you're gone or anything like that. So I just thought that was really cool, worth mentioning. So yeah, we went walking up and down the street that night looking for cannabis. Saw a lot of cute animals. Like, oh my God, they have so many street dogs and just like roaming animals, but didn't find anything. The next day went wandering up and down the street to see if we could find cannabis. Didn't find anything. Found a cat that looked just like May though. Oh my God, it was so cute. Like I had to give it scritches. For those who don't follow me on Instagram, if you have an Instagram, please feel free to follow me. I always share the handles down in my comments or the description of the vlog. And that's where I shared like a play-by-play of this entire trip. And so yeah, that cat looked just like May. Specifically, like it had the white tufts in the front and it was all black otherwise, and just like when I first got her. It was so cute. So anyway, then my brother-in-law contacted me and was like, you really shouldn't be touching the animals. They're kind of bad for you. Like mentioned, you know, the diseases and stuff that they have down there. And I also came to realize very quickly that they're all very dirty. So as soon as you touch them, your hands look like you've been playing with charcoal. So I stopped petting the animals. I really wanted to, but I stopped. But anyway, the next day was the festival. So it started at 2. We weren't really too interested in the initial very first artist. We wanted to get there. I kind of wanted to see Last Dinosaurs, which was an artist that started, it was the first of their stage, but it wasn't like the first of the opening. They started at like 3:10 and the festival opened at 2. We didn't get there though till get through everything until like 3:30-ish. So it was like just at the end of their set that we got there, which kind of sucked, but oh well. I had never seen them before, like heard of them before. I literally only learned about them because they were going to the festival, and I was like, might as well check them out, right? I went through all the artists that were supposed to be going to the festival to see which ones we'd like. And they seem like one, but they also seem like one that's better in like a small venue, like the music hall, instead of like a giant festival. So, so yeah, went to, then I think the next artist that we saw was Totally Enormous Extinct Dinosaurs, which is an EDM artist. Very interesting, but bass was a little too heavy, but it was kind of cool to like bop to him. Sugar Ray was there. That was very interesting. He is incredibly lively. Totally recommend his show. Like, didn't watch a lot of it. Walked away to go be present for other stuff because he overlapped with like Bastille and stuff. But like, he was fun. He was fun. Then when Bastille came on, oh my god, it was just, I was in heaven. My anxiety completely went away. Like I wasn't really able to eat much. I didn't get to drink any alcohol whatsoever at the event, which is probably good for my health, but it would have been fun. But no, I couldn't because I was just too full of anxiety. All I was eating was like the crusts of Shane's food. Like I was literally like, okay, we're gonna get you a hot dog so I can have the bun. We're gonna get you pizza so that I can have the crust. Because that's the only thing I could eat, like was really dry stuff. I knew how to treat this anxious stomach, right? It's very picky, but as long as I just keep feeding it little bits of food, it won't totally melt down. So that's what I did. Bastille came on, absolutely incredible show. We were really hoping to see Joy, but he didn't play Joy. But he did play a couple of other songs that we hadn't seen before. And he's just always, I just love Dan. He's my favorite male vocal artist. Like his voice is so beautiful. Dan Smith, Bastille, recommend. Yes. So that helped drain my anxiety, and like I just felt completely neutral. Okay, fine. I was like, this is nice. This is nice to be not having anxiety and like to have my body relaxed. But then it came back about 20 minutes later, which sucked, but it is what it is. We also saw Charlie Puth at one point. Like we were kind of at a distance again because I wasn't there for him, but he seemed like he was pretty good for people who like the romance stuff. And then, oh my god, Chainsmokers. Oh my god, Chainsmokers. They were incredible. That is so my music. Like, just so good. My only regret is that like I left them about 40 minutes before they finished their performance because their finish backed right up into the start of Imagine Dragons start, and I wanted to try and get closer up for Imagine Dragons, but people were like there for Imagine Dragons, right? So there'd been people probably waiting there for like a fucking hour. I don't know, but there was already like quite a crowd up the front. It ultimately didn't end up feeling worthwhile to have left the Chainsmokers performance to try and get, because I ended up sitting around for like half an hour waiting for Imagine Dragons, listening at quite a distance because they separated them enough that it wouldn't interfere, to the Chainsmokers, and just being like, oh, that was so good, I should be over there right now. Because I wasn't able to, the whole purpose of getting there early didn't really serve itself. I wasn't able to get that close. But oh well, it was what it was. Ugh, I feel like I have hair in my nose, that's why I keep itching it. But anyway, yeah, so that's fine though. If Chainsmokers ever comes to Toronto, or I mean, gosh, London, but that probably won't happen. We're not big enough. Bastille won't even come here. The only place I can ever see them is Toronto. But say Chainsmokers comes with anywhere of the vicinity of me, I'm going. It's happening. Oh my god. But yeah, Imagine Dragons was amazing as well. Dan Reynolds is just a true blessing to see on stage. He's a blessing to the world. He's so sweet and heartfelt. He always talks mental health. He takes time out of the show to tell people to like, that Believer, that song Believer is important. It really means a lot in terms of like the importance of believing in yourself and stuff like that. And he brought a little 16-year-old girl up onto stage and like had her singing with him and stuff. And it was something. It was quite amazing. I think I got some videos of those clips in particular. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, I always make a post eventually. It's never like right away, but I always make a post summarizing my trips or my music events. I attend a lot of live music when I can. So definitely feel free to check that out. It should be good, and I'll be including clips of that girl. Um, what else happened? Oh yeah, so for the first day, so the whole Corona Capital event is kind of like this, it's a music festival theme park kind of thing. Like they had a Ferris wheel, they had like all these different little activities that you could do. Kind of love that they had silent, what do you call it, headphone party or whatever, where like the DJ was playing into the headphones and everyone who's only has the headphones can hear it. And they've had like these things, all these kinds of like blow up stuff and stuff to take pictures. And I really focused on the music the first day because the main reason we were there was Bastille and Imagine Dragons. It was the first day, people. The second day, like it was just, we couldn't buy tickets for only one day. So we were like, we'll just go and see. And then I explored the artists and I was like, well, we already know we like Royal and the Serpent. And then Shane really wanted to see Pussy Riot and she looked pretty cool. And then I saw Blue to Tiger and Sophie something Baxton. I can't remember now. But there was a couple people and I was like, oh, they look pretty good. Let's check them out. Yeah, it didn't quite work out that way because we still couldn't find cannabis, so I was still constantly struggling with my anxiety. And then we finally did find it, but the person wasn't able to get it to us until like kind of mid-afternoon. So we just avoided going until we could get it. And then we had met a couple of people. Oh my God, trying to get back from the first day was brutal. We were standing around for like, God, maybe an hour, trying to like hail a taxi or just get anything. And then this shuttle shows up and is like, we'll take you. No, we don't have any seats, but we'll take you. So it's a shuttle of like, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm gonna say it had like 9 seats. And it had like 16 people in it. It was nuts. Very uncomfortable, not helpful for my nausea whatsoever. So getting back from the first day sucked ass. But we met a couple of Mexicans who were at our hotel, Melissa and Roberto, very cool people. And so Melissa had driven all the way from Mexico City to Guadalajara the first night, and then they went to the first night because, you know, she's a superhuman like you guys, who can just do all the things and have all the spoons. And then the next day she was there for Interpol. She absolutely loves Interpol. And so they didn't really care about the early stuff, so they're like, we haven't left yet, but you're welcome for a ride. So we ended up getting a ride with them, but it was so much hotter the second day that even though her driving was so much smoother than our initial Uber the first day, which was kind of rough, I still had a rough time because I was still dealing with anxiety and then the heat and then like hardly any food. It was just not pretty. And we hadn't had any cannabis yet. I'd rolled it, but we hadn't smoked it yet. We were going to smoke it when we got there. We ended up smoking it in the car as a way to try and calm me down, but I didn't roll that much because I didn't really realize. I mean, I should have known because it was seedy as hell, but I mean, of course it was, that it really wasn't very strong, and I'm used to much stronger stuff. And our improvisation for rolling, because we were like, we couldn't find rolling papers anywhere, which was a fun experience. So the person that got it for us was like, well, the only thing I could think of is to get cigarettes and then just like empty out the tobacco. And I'm like, well, half the problem's the filter, but I can get the filter out too. So yeah, we just ended up using the papers, like the paper outside of a cigarette, and we was just like rolled it, rolled, squeezed, slowly worked out the tobacco one way, threw it out, and then worked the filter out the other way, threw it out, and then just used the paper. So, you know, the main expensive part, we just threw that part out. Really wanted the paper. The stuff we bought each, like it was in these little bags. It was probably like a quarter each. And we paid like $50 for $45 for it. It wasn't bad, but it was seedy as all hell. And so I just, I quickly made what I could before we were leaving, not thinking, you know, it might not be that strong, and so we'll want more. So anyway, we get there. Because of the horror of trying to get home the night before, that's why Melissa had decided she was going to drive to the event and then park and drive out later. Excuse me. So they dropped us off, and they were like, you know, you get out here, go, feel free to get into the festival, you don't have to keep dealing with the car in the heat. We're going to go park. And then Shane realized he forgot the tickets, which was just like, oh, okay, all right. And I just kind of like immediately accepted my fate that we were not going to the event. So we just went and we went basically back to the same spot we were the night before, hailed a cab, got back there, rolled more cannabis joints, and then thought about going back, but I just wasn't sure how it was going to be for me. I'm trying to learn more to be in the moment and not to like suffer now for later. Now I'm like, God damn it, if you just had suffered in the moment, you still could have had fun. So I don't know. But I ended up deciding, because of the nausea and the uncertainty of how the motion was going to affect me, even with the cannabis, because it was weak, I was just like, I don't know. No, I don't think so. And so we didn't go back the second night. And I'm kind of bummed that I made that decision. But it is what it is. At least I felt finally relieved. Like, so the difference that I should say a proper amount of cannabis made, because unfortunately not just a few tokes. It took a bit more than that. But like, once I had enough, it was like night and day. I was so relieved. It was absolutely ridiculous and frustrating when you think about how incredibly illegal it is in all these different locations and basically internationally, whereas significantly less harmful to my body than clonazepam. No addictive properties compared to clonazepam. Yes, habit forming, but that's different. It's just chemically different. And like that, it works when I like have the right dosage. Whereas like I take all these other meds and they just don't. Frustrating, to say the least. So we go to bed because we have to wake up kind of early for our flight that is supposed to leave at 11 to Mexico City, because it's the same way back from Guadalajara to Mexico City to Toronto. And I wake up to an email that says flight is canceled. And I'm just like, no. And my brain just kind of spirals into meltdown mode. Unfortunately, I was really triggered by the uncertainty of it. I guess that's something I definitely, I tried to prepare as much as I could for this trip, but the thing I definitely didn't prepare for was cancellations and how to handle them. I just never faced that before. And yeah, it was a mess. So this is where the story gets dramatic, I guess we could say. So Shane has someone he'd been dating over the last year and some. I don't think they're together now. It's complicated and confusing. We're going to say the last I heard they weren't together. So his ex had been visiting with his mom, because they've become besties. And so she was around when it came out, like he said to his mom, like, the flight's canceled, we don't know what to do. And so this person had a lot of experience with flying. She's got a very wealthy, well-off job, and so she does lots of vacationing. And she was like, oh, we'll go to the airport, try and get on a wait list. And I was like, well, we did literally just have that experience coming from Mexico City to Guadalajara, right? Like, we were standing there, and it's only because we were standing there, because we heard them, they actually read off a lot of names before ours, and those people weren't there. And it's only because those people that were higher on the wait list weren't there that we got on the plane. So I was on that page of like, okay, yeah, you have to be present and on the wait list for it to count. So I get, like, let's go to the airport, get ourselves on the wait list, be there for them to call our names, and then get on a flight. But that's because at the time we didn't realize that they had canceled all flights to Mexico City. At least from our airline, which was Air Mexico. So we ended up going to, but the biggest thing that really just added and contributed to my meltdown was I had no phone. I had traveled with no phone because I'm with Lucky, and they are a cheap company who does not have roaming. I had every intention of paying whatever I had to for roaming, but they just didn't have it. And I was like, okay, well, I managed this before. Might have been 10 years ago, but I managed it, so let's do it. We'll be fine. Turns out that Mexican airports don't have phones. Like, they don't have pay phones. They don't have information phones. They don't have courtesy phones. They just don't have phones. And my only, like, I never had a problem in the Fiji airport in order to have to see if they did. I just know that when I was in American airports, they had phones that I could use, that I could, like, throw quarters in or just tap a credit card on or something to use. Not the case in Mexico. So we get to the airport with this canceled flight, and they're like, oh, you have a canceled flight. Call this number. Shit, we can't. To be clear, we had bought Shane a SIM card, a Mexican SIM card, for him to be able to, like, text and interact with people. And it told him that he had funding until, like, 2024, but then his money ran out, apparently. So we had no ability to make phone calls. And so that didn't help. And then Shane was really, don't go somewhere you don't know the language. Don't be so ignorant. I did that. Don't do that. Shane spent quite a while, 40 days, I think he said, or so, working on Duolingo to learn Spanish. So he knew, what did he say? Moi? Un peu? I can't remember. That's French. He knew a little Spanish, and he knew how to say, I know a little Spanish. But I knew basically none, which, don't do that. Just, like, and it's not, I did not expect them, I wasn't that kind of person where I, like, expected them to know English. I just hoped, and then was hoping I could navigate it. And I did, in the sense of Google Translate. Like, there was lots of using Google Translate, and Shane had this whole, like, app that he was using as well. But it became a thing when we're dealing with a canceled flight and we're on a time crunch, and he just, like, he's struggling to communicate with anyone in the airport. No one really seems to know English. And I have shut down, unfortunately. PTSD has just absolutely made all faculties go black. And I am like, everything is awful and I can't do this. And that's just exactly where my head was. Yay, trauma. And so I was sitting in a puddle while he was coordinating and communicating the situation with his family. And so they jumped into action through the assistance of his ex as well, who, like, I guess got a, what do you call them, travel agent involved. Like, she knew someone who was a travel agent who helped them figure out flight options. And I was not in a thinking mode. I was not able to act. I was not able to really do anything but spiral. So they found an option, and I was like, book it, whatever, just do it. Yeah, so our flight, both of us together, if I remember correctly, it was $1,000 something. I'm gonna say $1,100 to get both of us to Guadalajara and back from Guadalajara. That's what I spent. They spent $1,400 per person to get us back. Just to get us back. So I lost and need to work on the insurance recovery for anxiety. I need my plane tickets that I lost out on, technically, and I'm going to be trying to recover for the cancellation and then just the straight up missed flight because we couldn't get to Mexico City. Also makes no sense to me, by the way. They're canceling all flights into Mexico City, but my flight out of Mexico City to Toronto still happened. I I don't want to. I figured like all flights out of Mexico City would be canceled, right? Nope, apparently not. So anyway, the one was canceled on us. The one that we missed, the total cost for both of us for that flight was like $525 or something, like 5 something, like almost a third of the cost of one of us getting home. Fuck. So, not that I didn't do this entire trip on debt, because we don't always make good decisions. But yeah, I'm pretty fucked financially. I've been looking for work, just to be clear, but I can only work part-time. I've only got so much capacity, right, with the whole freaking limited spoons thing. So, I budgeted out this trip. The way it worked out is Shane's debit wasn't working quite a bit, so I had to use my credit card a lot more than I was supposed to. So if it all had worked out fine, he would have owed me $500 and something, and then I could have like thrown that onto all the credit, and like that could have helped a little. But nope, just deduct that 5 something out of the 14, and now I owe your family like $800. Oh, that's great. Fuck. So that's that situation. Not pretty. I'm gonna figure it out. But yeah. And what this ultimately led to was we were flying from Guadalajara to Houston, and then from Houston to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Buffalo, and then I had no idea at that point. And the initial offer was for his ex to come pick us up because she happened to have a passport and a vehicle. And it was just like, you're fucking kidding me, right? She hates me. And I'm not exaggerating. Like, I'll be completely honest. When he first suggested it, we were sitting in the airport still. And this is all the next day, by the way. This is all like, okay, we were able to get a flight, but it's not until tomorrow. So you guys have to go back to the hotel. So we went to the airport and dressed out at the airport for no reason. But then they're like, yeah, so then you'll be stuck in Buffalo, and so then she'll come get you. And I was just like, ew! Yeah, I know, so mature, right? I apologize. I'm sorry. I was not in a good mental state. But my only thought was just the conflict that would ensue, and the ugliness, and the like, this person has totally shit-talked me heavy, so it's like, really? They're okay with that? It was their idea, as far as I understand, initially. But I was like, alright, whatever. You know what? I can shut my mouth. I can shut my mouth. Sometimes. So, I was like, fine, I'll just be quiet in the back, fine, whatever. Let's just get us home. Just get us home. And then I don't remember, I don't know how things ensued after that, but basically it was like, okay, these flights have been booked, go back to the hotel. Okay, we reserved another hotel room for you, go back to the one you initially went to, get a room, and then come back at 3 fucking a.m. for a flight that was at 7, because that's just how, or no, it was 4 a.m. for a flight at 7, because you have to go 3 hours early. Anyways, so that's 5 a.m. my time. So that sucked. At the same time, the initial person that had got us the cannabis was at the hotel, so they were able to get us more. Right, we still had plenty before, like when we were supposed to initially leave, but we thought we were leaving, so we gave it away to our Mexican friends, because we're like, we can't fly with this, so here you go. If you're ever looking for cannabis in Mexico, the word is mota. Now you know. Mota means little speck. So that's just a fun little tidbit that we learned. We had to learn. That was quite the thing too, because we're going around the festival, because it was recommended that we look on the street and in the festival, so we're walking around like the festival whenever we smell a little whiff of it, and we're like, mota? Do you have some mota? 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 Anyway. So we get some more cannabis, relax for the evening, basically. I'm feeling better because of like the cannabis, and I realize once we're in the room and I'm able to calm down a bit that I could contact customer service and stuff because, right, by the way, I tend to melt down publicly. So like as this is happening, I'm writing statuses and stories on my Instagram being like, I want to die now, and stuff like that because I'm like, yeah, all flights have been canceled and we don't know what to do. Please kill me. Were some of the things that I put on my Instagram. Hello, I'm dramatic. Um, but anyway, once I was able to calm down, or because I was putting out those statuses, some people were reaching out who had information. So I had a friend reach out and she was like, I'm a travel agent, just so you know, like next time you need travel insurance, come to me. And she mentioned that I should look into interruption insurance. And if I had gotten that, I don't think I did, unfortunately. I'm still going to look into the cancellation insurance because I did get that. But she mentioned that there's like a customer service way of like contacting customer service through Expedia to figure things out. My main thing, the reason I was like melting down and not acting was because I had it in my head with the trauma and the brain, like you get very narrow-minded when you're in the trauma brain. I was like, I need a phone to contact customer service. I don't have a phone. And they didn't have one anywhere in the airport to let me use, and I couldn't call from the hotel either, because I guess it was international, I don't know. But once we got back into the hotel room and I was calmer, I realized I could scroll down the email and there was like a customer service chat bot that would bring me to a chat agent if the bot couldn't help me, which the bot never could. Yeah, I pressed the backspace on that thing 3 times. Twice. The 3rd time I didn't until I was like done with the conversation, but I had to restart the conversation 3 times. Because if you exit out, there's no going back. And I was just like, oh my fucking god, this is not the time. But yeah, I went through chatting with people to try, and I'm like, what if I had done that sooner? Maybe I could have found us some way, some other flight from another airline to Mexico City. But as far as I understand, my thinking brain and like putting everything together now that I, can use it, Air Mexico's policy is that they give you 24 hours. Within 24 hours, they'll put you on another plane to get you where you needed to go. And so, like, if they had canceled all Air Mexico flights, they weren't about to pay for us to go on another airline, was the gist of that. They will only help you via putting you on another one of their planes. And the agent had clarified that that wasn't really helpful to us because they were shut down that day, so then they would have to put us on a flight the next day, and there were no flights out of Mexico City to Toronto the next day. So the more I think about it, the more like, maybe I couldn't have done anything. Maybe that was our only option. But I keep thinking, God, if I just hadn't melted down, maybe I could have acted and like been, I don't know, fucking useful in the moment, and maybe sorted out our situation and somehow found us a way to Mexico City so that we could have caught our connecting flight. The point is that didn't happen. And I'm going to have to do some dancing and jumping through hoops to try and get that money back if I can. But I really hope I can, because it's about the only way I'm going to be able to afford to pay back some of the money that I now owe Shane's family for getting me home. And that's the other fun reality that this whole trip brought up for me, because of all the cancellations and the being trapped, and the flights being shut down because of a volcano. Turns out you're a victim to the weather when you're flying. Who knew? If it weren't for his family, I would have been utterly trapped. I don't have any family to ask for help at all. I am the person in my family who has any resources. Me, the disabled, unemployed, on disability assistance person. Because of my skills and my competence, I have credit. And because of my skills and my competence, I have now graduated from college. Because of my skills and competence, I have a car, I have resources that my family just doesn't have. So even though I'm really fucking poor and not doing well, I'm still the person that people lean on. So when I need help, I'm fucked. So that was the situation. So, thanks, Shane's family. I don't know what I would have done. Now I owe so much money, though. Fuck my life. Okay, gonna stop complaining about that now. But yeah, so went back to the hotel, managed to sleep-ish. Oh, right, but there was the whole, like, things had dissolved and fallen apart between Shane and his ex, and I don't really understand what happened. But I mean, he snapped once or twice because it was a really stressful situation. Then he tried to apologize, and I was like trying to not listen. Like the only room he could go into that was separate without standing out in the hall was the bathroom. And so I didn't hear a lot of the conversation, but there were points when he ended up starting to yell because they were getting frictiony. And it was ugly. You know, I obviously didn't hear the other side of the conversation, but sometimes you just know what's been said because of the way the person has responded, right? Don't know if I've ever heard such an abusive conversation before. And Shane was not the abuser. And you know, we all react in different ways when we're under stress. The neurotic tend to get into abusive loops. I've done it. I've totally done it. I also take recognition and acknowledge it, though. So unfortunately, a lot of our evening was just trying to soothe and calm him down after him trying to appeal to her for help because he didn't know what we were going to do when we got to Buffalo. When I realized how unhealthy the conversation had gone, I like started backpedaling because I was in the mindset at the point that we didn't have a choice but to ask her for help either. And I was just like, you know what? No, we're grown adults. We can figure this out. We will figure this out. We do not need her. We do not need someone who treats other people like that. So, and again, I am guilty of being a shithead. The difference is that I will acknowledge it and talk about it and work it out and be like, yeah, I was a shithead. That was just not the case in this situation. So, there was, like, I woke up to him crying a couple of times, and it was difficult to get to sleep and stuff. So, that was kind of rough. But, got through the night, woke up super early, got to the airport. He went and hid the leftover of our multa cannabis somewhere for someone to find. Like, you know the way they do where, I don't know if you guys have been on Reddit, but on Reddit, there are, like, on our trees and various other places, you can find out where people have stashed leftover cannabis because they couldn't take it with them. That's what he did. And then was that flight delayed as well? No, not that one. That one left on time because we were with, so the way back we flew all United Airlines. Shane kept singing this silly little song, United Airlines break a ties, or whatever. Some of you might know the reference because it apparently got kind of big, but because a guitar artist was on tour and they broke his guitar and then would refuse to replace it. But anyway, their planes are so much smoother than Air Mexico. Oh my god. Like, I was fully expecting to be sick as all hell for the takeoff and the landing, and I wasn't. I was just like, whoa, is this how flying can be? It was so much smoother. But then landing in Houston, we had quite the layover. We just kind of chilled, ate, didn't like really stress about the time much until a thunderstorm rolled in and I saw lightning myself, and they're like, yeah, we shut down the ramps, can't fly anywhere now. It's just like, we have like 2 other flights to catch. Fuck. So start stressing over that for obvious reasons. But they finally get us get us up into the air. And so from Houston, we flew then to Chicago, but because of the delays in our initial flight, we landed like 20 minutes before the next flight was supposed to take off, or start boarding, sorry. Still stressful. So we were like running through the airport, and we got to the next one 15 minutes before it took off. And then from Chicago, we flew into Buffalo. Tired, but I managed to keep it together. I didn't throw up at all, which was nice. Because the moment you throw up, then that just really compromises the whole system, because then you don't have the food to give the energy to deal with the anxiety. Right, and so when we were in Houston in the layover, I went on Expedia, I was just Googling around, and it seemed, according to what I was seeing, it seemed like it was no problem to just book a car at 1 a.m. in the morning in Buffalo, right across, like their car booking was literally across the street from the exit of the airport. And, we landed at 12, and I thought it was reasonable. Yeah, we landed at 11:59. That was supposed to be our landing. We actually landed at 11:50, and I thought it was reasonable to book our pickup for our rental for 12:30. We get there, and they are open, like only them and one other, like there was like several other rentals, but only one of the other ones was open. And then Shane's payment won't go through because they want like 500 and something American, which is like 700 and something Canadian. And Shane just didn't have that much money left. And then we're like, okay, I guess we have to use your credit card. And I was just in such a mood for obvious reasons that I was like, of course we do, because that's been the entire fucking trip is we need my credit card. We can't use any of your money. He did pay for half of a lot of things, just to be clear, before the trip, but just on the trip, he could pay for a lot, and it was annoying. And I was tired. But they needed everything to match. So if they're going to use your credit card for payment, then they need your license, and I did not bring my license because I didn't drive there, because I thought, don't bring what you don't need, because then you're just going to lose it. So I only brought a health card as ID in addition to my passport. So we couldn't use my form of payment. But the fun fact is, once I got home and looked at my bank account, I only had $200 left. So we still wouldn't have been able to use my payment because I didn't have the fucking money. So we went back to the airport because that's the only source of Wi-Fi that we had in order to communicate with his family. And I am in just absolute meltdown shutdown. Like, any semblance of calm that I might have gained is gone. And I am just not good. And like started kind of messaging my dad unkindly. I was just mad that I couldn't rely on him or anyone for help in the moment. So I was letting him know. Sorry, Dad. Turns out I'm an asshole and I'm highly anxious and in a triggered state. Yeah, no, a lot of people know that because that's all they know of me. They think that that's just who I am, is my triggered state, because I've spent a lot of time like that. But anyway, I swear there's another side of me. It's not allowed to come out a lot of the time. So I'm like, oh, right, no, sorry. I wasn't quite fully into meltdown yet. We went back to the airport. He contacted his family. They sent him money, but it took a while because it was sending from like some online bank, and when it's not from the same bank even, let alone from some obscure online bank, it can take a while for e-transfers to send. For those who aren't Canadian, e-transfers are sending money through your email. It's so much more convenient, and your country needs to adapt. But anyway, I learned that like they don't have e-transfers in like America and various other places, and I'm like, get with it, what? Anyway, so it took a while for the money to show up. By the time we went back to, like, literally across the street, like a minute walk, they were closed, because it took a while for the money to come. And I guess she's like, I'll be here, but I guess she meant, you know, until closing time, which was 1 a.m. And we went, I don't know, 20 after 1, 1:30, I don't remember. But yeah, that's when I went into full meltdown, was when the rental closed. And yeah, it just wasn't pretty. So then Shane starts poking around and looking around, and then he finds that there are bus tickets that we can get for a 3-hour bus ride from Buffalo to the Toronto bus station. I wasn't too pleased with that because I've been to the Toronto bus station many times, and I knew that it was downtown. It was not at the airport. I was like, you realize that means another trip. Like, we have to take an Uber or something to get to the airport to get to your goddamn car. And he's like, yeah, but it's an option. It gets us into Canada. Um, so that's what we did. He bought those tickets, got an Uber from the airport to that bus station. From that bus station, it was kind of a kerfuffle getting on the bus. The number of people you have to show your personal identification to traveling makes me so anxious these days, because the amount I don't share my personal information nearly as much, I'm just like, ugh. But yeah, so got on that bus. Then we all had to get off at the border. Like, all our shit had to be unloaded and like poked through. And then we had to go justify our existence and why we were coming across the border by bus. That was fun. We were just like, volcano, blow up. Eh. And then we got to see the border guy be like a racist to the guy after us and like quiz the shit out of him way more than he did us. And, you know, that's always fun. But yeah, got back on the bus, got to the bus stall, couldn't figure out how to get out of the bus station initially, so that was a bit of like running around in circles, and I was so exhausted at that point. I was walking like a snail and I could hardly talk. Like, I can't even mimic it. Like, Shane had to like put his ear to my mouth to be able to hear what I was saying, because I just couldn't put air behind my words. I was so dead. But yeah, Ubered to the parking lot of the airport at Pearson, found the car. I had intentionally left myself a J and a banana. For those who haven't seen my nausea videos, bananas are like medicine to me. It's similar to smoking a joint in terms of the absolute relief that they just provide my system instantly. Don't know why. But yeah, sat there and was just like enjoying my banana. And then I had CBDJs and rolled myself like a full-on THC CBD joint. So I started with the CBDJs, and I checked in with Shane. I was like, "Are you sure you're okay?" He insisted he was fine. So we drove from there to London. All in all, 28 hours from like leaving the hotel in Mexico to getting to my apartment. And then Shane drove another hour and some, little bit over an hour ish, to get to his place in Petrolia. And the stupid jerk was like, it was kind of rough. Like, I had to turn on the AC max and like smack myself a few times. And I'm like, why didn't you just pull over and sleep? Fuck! Like, he's like, I don't know, I was totally fine, like, from Toronto to London, no problem. And I went and got a coffee and it did nothing for me. And then I just like started to melt down after that. And I was just like, well, I'm glad you didn't kill yourself and everyone else on the frickin' highway. Jesus. FYI, fatigue kills. Pull over and sleep. Just a bit. Yeah. It was a crazy trip. I don't think I'm gonna do that again. I love Bastille. I love Imagine Dragons. I will probably travel across the border to the States to see them, but probably not even multiple states, just maybe one, like Michigan or Detroit, or Buffalo. But like, definitely, you know, New York, something like that. Not something on the border. If they're not on the border, it's not happening. I need to be more realistic about my spoons and the potential for things to go all wrong. I packed obsessively. I had way more clothes than I needed. I had way more toiletries than I needed. I had lots of like medical supplies. I was prepared up the ass when it came to packing. I did not watch the news to learn about the volcano erupting 3 days before I left. I did not go through learning the process of what happens when a plane is canceled. I did not factor in the aspects that you are always vulnerable to, whether you're stationary or traveling, and that is weather. We are not in control of the weather, no matter how much we try to pretend. So, learn from my lesson. get travel insurance that includes interruption insurance. Definitely get medical and cancellation, and learn the processes of how to react when things go wrong. At least if you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder like me. Because I get that, you know, again, average functioning superhuman adults. I just call you superhuman because I feel so, it makes me feel less. But, oh, train of thought. Yeah. Oh, when you have trauma, you need to anticipate that you're going to melt down when things don't go well, unless you've gotten past that. I'm just not quite there yet. I'm really far from where I used to be, but when unexpected things happen, and it was thing after thing after thing after thing kind of thing, I can't. And I was already nervous. One of the reasons I initially melted down is because I was already nervous because of the kerfuffle about getting there with Air Mexico. I was like, oh God, I hope nothing happens. And then it's canceled. And I was just like, all the worst things could happen happened. So yeah, if you have trauma, prepare for the unexpected. And then hopefully, even if you're in meltdown, you can still handle it because you have a plan. I tried to do that, but I just didn't anticipate all the aspects of traveling. I really am pretty poor for a Canadian, so I don't have much travel experience. Not none. It was Shane's first time flying. It was Shane's first time traveling. I guess he's been across the border, but you know, traveling more than one state outside of Canada. It was my third time. Well, okay, no. When I was a kid, I traveled to Kentucky, and then I went to Fiji twice. So it was my fourth time technically traveling, flying. So I didn't think I was that inexperienced. But one of the bigger lessons also is get a travel SIM card. If your provider doesn't provide travel SIM cards, call other providers, see if they'll give you a temp SIM card. Do not travel without a phone. It is not doable these days. The American airports have phones, but don't expect a country outside of your own to be like your own airport. Just don't. You know, Canadian airports have phones. Mexican airports do not. That is the lesson. Anyway, this has been an hour ramble. Feel free to comment below with any questions or anything that you can relate to in terms of this insanity of a trip that I just had. Be careful if you're dealing with disabilities and you're traveling. Prepare yourself. If you're going somewhere where cannabis isn't legal and cannabis is your medicine, I don't know what else to say. You're brave. I hope you can do it. I sort of did, but it was so difficult that I feel like my next activism campaign, when I'm done with the fireworks stuff I'm dealing with locally, is petitioning the UN for traveling rights for medical cannabis. And I don't know how serious I'm going to get about that, because the whole idea of, I have no idea where to even start with that. But you know, I'm ambitious. I do stupid stuff sometimes. Sometimes I have progress. Sometimes I don't. You never know until you try, right? That's where I'm at. Thanks for listening if you made it this far. And as always, do join me again next week or sometime soon, where I try again to share a little something I've learned or experienced in life.